Well, hello, lovely listeners, and welcome, viewers. Today, I have the gorgeous Gareth Icke. He doesn't really need an introduction. I know you all know who he is, but I'm going to do a little bio anyway. So, Gareth is obviously famously David Icke's son. He's an activist, a singer-songwriter, which I am as well, an author. Didn't know this, former international beach soccer player, which is pretty unusual based on the fact that you live in Derbyshire. The presenter of the daily news show Trending, as well as Gareth Icke Tonight, Bring the Fire. These are both weekly uncensored current affairs shows on the Ickonic Network. And you also present The Walk, which is a YouTube channel where you travel across the UK, walking historical routes and exploring the UK's vast history, as well as the WTAF even podcast, where you and Richard Willett take a comical look at world events. You're a father and a husband, you have two children, and you live in Derbyshire. Welcome. It's amazing to have you.
Thanks for having me.
How did
Thanks for
you
having
get
me.
into beach soccer?
Well, it's a funny one. I was living on the Isle of Wight at the time, but
Ah.
as most things that seem to happen to me in my younger years, it involved pubs. So, I used to play football basically, and I'd played to an all right level, and then I'd had a bunch of surgeries as a kid, and so physically I wasn't passing medicals and stuff going forward. So that was the end of that. And then so I was out drinking with my sister. And some guys came up and they said, "Oh, we've got a beach soccer match tomorrow, and we need a goalie." And you used to play in goal, didn't you? And I went, "Well, I don't even know what beach soccer is, but yeah, all right, fine, no worries. Yeah, I'll play for you tomorrow, whatever." So then the next morning, obviously, we carry on having a night out, and then the next no morning, the door goes and it's my sister knocking on the door. She's like, "Yeah, yeah," and I was like, "What's going on?" She's like, "Oh, you playing football, playing beach soccer, aren't you?" I was like, "What have I agreed to? What have I said I'll do now?" And so I ended up going and playing beach soccer, and I loved it. It's a real cool, fun version of football. Basically, it's very the goalie is basically almost like a quarterback as well. So rather than being that guy that sometimes just stands in the net, doesn't do anything for 90 minutes, everything is going through you really. So I loved it, and we won the game. I played really well, and I was like, oh, that was cool. And then they basically said, well, the guy we normally have in goal, he plays out on the park as well. He doesn't really want to go in goal. So do you fancy playing? I was like, yeah, all right, yeah. So I ended up playing for this team. They were sort of a mid-table team, but that was fun for me because it meant I got more shots to save, basically. And then about a month later or something like that, I was at work and I got a phone call saying, basically, can you be in Marseille this weekend? Right, so I'm obviously like, I'm one of those guys that I'll say yes to most things and then I'll just worry about it later. So I was like, well, it depends who's paying. So I'm like, I'm skint, I'm in my early 20s. And they're like, oh no, it'll be all paid for, like by the FA and stuff. It's just, we basically, you don't need to do anything. We just need you to come to France and sit on the bench, basically, in these two World Cup qualifier games. They were playing against France, who at the time were world champions and had Eric Cantona actually as their manager, and then Greece. We're not expected to win either game, and you won't play anyway. Basically, we just need someone to sit on the bench because our other sub goalie, someone's knocked over a coffee machine in a hotel lobby, and it's basically severed, pretty much, but severed his toe. So I'm like,
Oh,
okay. So that was it. So they got me some kit. I got on a plane. I flew out there on my own, met up with the team, played France in the first game, and they were true to their word. I didn't see a second of play, just sat on the bench. But for me, like there was a big crowd there because it was in France. It was live on Eurosport, which meant like my mum and dad could watch it on the telly, and even if they just saw it come along for the national anthem, still got my face on the telly, and it was quite exciting for a young kid, really, in my 20s. And then 2 days later, we played Greece and the number one goalie had got vertigo for some reason. I don't know what had happened. Anyway, he'd been complaining all morning. They didn't feel right. Um, so I'm sat on the bench, sort of first 10, 15 minutes to go by, and he's not right. And so he signals to the bench, I can't, I'm dizzy, I can't go on. So I got brought on, and I was like, shit, this is mad. And so I came on, and obviously I'd never played to that level, to like an international level. And like they had a guy called Stevarakis playing for him, I think, who's still Greece's top goal scorer in like international football. Like so they had some names there. So anyway, so one of them takes a shot, right? I'm not kidding. I didn't even see it. Right. It flew past my head. It hit the bar, flew back out again. And I went, oh, okay. This this is the level I'm playing. Um, but I've always been a bit of a blagger. Definitely as a kid, definitely a blagger. So they get a penalty about a minute later. And I thought, right, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. So Stevarakis is about to take it. So I walked up to him, like a right cocky little sod, and I went, "You're going to put it there, mate?" And he went, "What?" I went, "You're going to put it there, mate." And then he told me to f off, and he put it there, and I saved it, right? Saved the penalty, rebound hit me in the face, flew over the bar, and that was it. Their heads dropped because they'd just seen obviously this little scallywag come on and that, and we ended up winning 4-0.
Oh, wow.
And then that was it. I was in the England team then for 5 years,
Amazing.
traveling all over the world. Yeah, played in South Africa and Azerbaijan and Norway and in the Alps, in the Swiss Alps, in ski resorts with imported sand. Just dead weird, but it was really good fun. And then
Yeah.
in the end, I broke my tib and fib again, and that was the end of that. But it was a fun time.
Amazing.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so if you like I do with all my guests, if you I mean, as I said, people know who you are, people know who your dad is, so that people know a lot, probably not a lot about you, but think they know a lot about you. So if you can give us just a bit of your backstory, obviously that's part of it, which is sounds really exciting. But
Yeah, well, yeah, I played football. I was a musician. For a long, long time, touring around, America and Europe and all that kind of stuff. It was my life basically. Again, for about 5 years, must have something 5 years where
yeah, yeah.
I basically toured. I think it was like 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off
Were you
in
with
this
a
punk
band
rock band.
then? Was it yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I went on my own in the end, and did some stuff around Europe, like festivals and things like that, which were really good fun on my own. But in those days, I was in a punk band, yeah, and I mean, not like oi 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 punk, but like a melodic sort of punk rock indie type
Yeah.
vibe. And we lived in a tour bus 6 weeks out of 8. The other 2 weeks were on the Isle of Wight where we lived, working some cash in hand jobs, whatever you could get. Um, and yeah, I did that for a good few years, and then went
Did you support
solo.
any big bands?
I'm trying to think now. We did, but before they were big. So we supported
Yeah.
Biffy Clyro once
Oh
at the
yeah.
Royal Squadron, and it was probably in front of about 100 people. Um, and they obviously went on to be massive, But we were just kids really then, and they were like these slightly older, but still young. Actually, they were still early 20s probably at that point. Scottish lads, and they were really good. And there's probably a few others that went on to do quite well for themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great fun. And then I went solo, and that was fun. And then I ended up working for the Arts Council, which I loved, absolutely loved that side of it, because I realised that the music industry was a bit of a scam, really. Like I was playing festivals, and then I was being approached. Well, my manager at the time, he's passed away now, but we were really tight, me and him. And he didn't really like the industry either because he was an
Mm.
ex-musician. And yeah, he was being approached by like The Voice and by the X Factor and all these things to try and get me to go on an audition. And I was going, what? I don't think that's how it works. It was like, no, no, no. They could guarantee what rounds you could get to and stuff like that. The whole thing's a total scam. Um, and that sort of turned me off a bit. And then we had been offered £100,000 investment. So we recorded the album, my first album, solo album, recorded it ourselves. Me and him funded it because we didn't want to be in anyone's pocket, basically.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we were offered 100 grand by this organization called Icebreaker. I'm pretty sure they were named in the Panama Papers in the end as a bit of a money laundering thing. If my memory serves, I think it was something like that, out of the city of London, basically. We didn't know this at the time. We just thought it was like an art investment firm or whatever. Um, but the condition was I changed my name. So at first, in my infinite naivety, I thought it was because my name is a bit weird. Like like even when I played beach soccer, I was like in Israel they called me Gareth Icke, and so I get called Icky and Ickle and
Yeah,
Ick
yeah.
and like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I thought that was why. Like they were like, Gareth, how will people know how to say your name? So I went, well, that's fine because I don't really like going. I wouldn't really want to go on my name anyway. I'd rather have a band name,
Yeah.
like Badly Drawn Boy is just one guy, Aqualung is just one guy. And so I was like, I'm open to that. And they're like, no, you misunderstand. Basically, what we need you to do is disassociate yourself with your family and all family beliefs and all that sort of stuff, which I obviously wasn't willing to do.
No.
And so that was made quite clear at that point that that was the end of the road unless I was willing to sell out, which I wasn't. So I started working with the Arts Council and I loved that. And I did that for a few years. Working around sort of impoverished areas, which in the UK, we're supposed to be a first world country. There's a hell of a lot of them. old mining towns and stuff in the Midlands. And so we were going and taking art to kids. I always say like the parents are scraping to, afford food. They're not paying for cello lessons. So these kids weren't getting any music or art. So we were taking these projects to them, and they were just getting more and more defunded. And then as soon as COVID hit, mate, they just pulled the plug on all of it. And so ever since then, I've basically played like two, maybe three Freedom festivals a year. Apart from that, I don't really play anymore. Um,
I was going to ask
um,
you that if you'd done any recording or anything.
yeah, I've got plenty of records out there on
Yeah.
Spotify and all that kind of stuff.
Oh
It's kind of
yeah,
weird.
yeah.
Like I think I've
I have listened to a couple, but I just wondered if you were still recording now.
no, I haven't been, but I'd like to. Like my old guitarist, he moved back not that far from me now, so we live about half an hour from each other. So we met up for a beer actually the other week. It was like the first time I'd seen him in like 18 months to 2 years, and we used to play in Europe together and stuff. So he lives with his partner now, who's a musician. She's like an amazing piano player. So the three of us were like, should we do
Mm.
something? Let's do something. And I'd like to in the future again, hopefully, soonish. It's hard because the more insane the world gets, the more busy people like us get. It's
Totally. It's
the way it
very,
is. And obviously I've got two young kids. I've got a 3 year old, well, nearly 4 year old, and a just turned 7 year old. So that's a full-time job in itself. So it's just finding the time. But
yeah.
I used to play ice hockey for years as well, which I've just gone back to actually. I had 26 years off of ice hockey and I've just gone back to that. So that's I think probably my midlife crisis. I reckon that's what it is. I'm like one of the older guys, but I quite enjoy being one of the older guys. Like it's
Yeah.
funny because when I was a kid playing ice hockey, I was the youngest in the team by a mile, and I looked up to all these old experienced guys, and I was the young, wet behind the ears but fast. Like that was my skill because I was young, I was quick. Whereas now I'm a lot slower because age is a cruel mistress, but I've got the experience and old head of it. And so I'm looking at these younger lads that are just hella fast, and I'm like, I'm loving it. Like
Yeah.
the flip of the roles. So, um, yeah, so that's me, mate, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then the walking stuff just started off as it just started off as something that wasn't anything to do with this realm. Like I remember my wife saying to me, she was like, you watch all these walking videos and stuff on YouTube while you're working, like you'll have stuff on in the background. Why don't you go and take an evening or an afternoon once a week and go and do that? Go and start up a channel. Like it was all her idea. Just to have something that isn't either down the rabbit hole, like emotionally tough, or hardcore emotional in terms of sports. Like, so it's like that's just competitive. So it still has that emotional attachment to it. Like, you're pissed off when you lose and whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas just going out walking and making videos, that in theory should only be fun, unless you fall down a mine shaft or something, it should only be fun. And then it didn't take long, mate. I was looking at these structures, some of these things like we climb into places that I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He's a copper, and I was saying, I don't know if I should tell you some of the places I've been this week, but
Is he a
we're
good
going.
copper or a bad copper,
He's a great
Gareth?
copper. He's a lovely copper. And we were really awake as well. And we were, yeah, he just laughed when I said that. But we were, we go into some of these places, and I'm looking at these buildings and stuff. Some of these underground, um, kind of old mines and stuff that are apparently built by hand in the 16, 1700s. And you look at them going, oh, look, no chance. So I've gone down this rabbit hole now, and so I come home from some of these walks. I'm saying to my wife, I'm like, Gemma, like, honestly, mate, this stuff must have been, and she's there going, oh, for crying out loud,
Here we go. Here
this
we
is going to
go.
be the one thing that wasn't, and now I'm thinking, right, now I've got questions about the timeline of everything.
Mm.
But what's funny about it is I walk with some other channels, some other YouTube channels. Sometimes like there's a channel called Let's Explore. He's a real cool guy called Steve, and we'll go to play, and they say the same thing. And these are people that they're not in our conspiracy realm in the slightest, and they're saying no chance, mate, no chance. This was built by hand in the 1700s, no chance. Like you'll go and visit an old mill or something. They're like, I don't think this was an old mill. I think this was a structure that was built to harness the whatever, and like real different way of thinking. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's cool, man.
Yeah,
Like,
it
yeah.
is cool. There's more and more of that coming out. There's a guy I've seen on TikTok that's I don't know if you've seen him. He's going around and looking at all the big churches, and wherever there's a big church, there's a spring. And obviously, in this country, those springs have very often just been blocked and turned into some war monument or something like that, which is a real shame because, I mean, in Derbyshire, you've got quite a lot of springs around.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
In Coventry, not so much.
Got you. Is that where you are? Is it Cov?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, mate, I was born in Leamington Spa. Yeah,
Ah,
literally just about 8 miles or something. Isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we've got a really nice. There's a spring in Holbrook, I think, which is really close to where I live, and a lot of people go down there and just stock up. Go
Yeah,
and take big, massive, bottles and fill them up.
absolutely. So what was it like? I mean, it sounds like you've had a really exciting and interesting and variety within your journey. And like so many people, I was always a bit alternative, but I really blew up in 2020, like most people that that have come to this way of thinking.
Yeah,
You've obviously had it from a very young age. Your dad's David Icke, and he's famous apart from being a professional footballer for being absolutely ridiculed by Terry Wogan. I remember watching it myself, and I was only really young. And you look back at that interview, and you think, "Oh, what a wanker, Terry!" Terry was such a loved personality. I am, now I know what I know. He probably was a fucking weirdo or whatever, but I don't know that for a fact. Can I just say that before anybody kills me? So what was it like for you? Because I don't know whether you used to think, oh God, Dad, just shut up. Can we have a quiet life? Or whether you really got on board with where he was at.
well, I'll be honest, mate. I'm a gobshite, so I would be in absolutely no position to tell anyone to shut up. No, I was always raised to question everything, and I always did anyway. Like my first question would be when I was told something is like, well, one, is that true? And two, why are you telling me that? Like, is there a reason for it? Which my teachers used to hate me.
Yeah,
Um, Although I've bumped into quite a few of my old teachers in the like sort of the last 10, 15 years, in a grown up setting. And they don't say they hated me. They found me hard work, but actually they kind of actually understand a bit of more now of actually asking questions about stuff. So that's quite nice.
yeah,
Um, but um, but yes, I always asked stuff, always was kind of wanted to know why I was being told something and whatever. And then I think, 9/11 was a major one, in terms of this is bullshit, and it was so clearly so. So that was a big eye opener. And then actually going to Israel in 2006, I think it was, I went to play beach soccer against them, and we were there for a week, and they gave us the propaganda tour, be honest. And I saw things that didn't fit with what I'd been told in the mainstream media. Those pesky Arabs, if they'd only stop being violent and all that sort of stuff, was utter bollocks. And so that got me on a road of, well, what else have I been lied to about? And that was it really. I think once you climb onto that fairground ride, you don't really get off it. I got, quite a few mates that have tried to get off it. Maybe like in COVID, they got on the roller coaster, like here we go, and then restrictions got lifted and whatever, and they went, I kind of want my old life again. I
yeah.
kind of want, so they step off it, and then you don't see him for a bit, and then you see him again. You go, you're right. You go, yeah, I'm back on the bloody roller coaster, 15-minute cities, and it's like there's that. So that was it for me. I was always, questioning stuff, and another thing as well, which I think kind of was a big part of it, is I could see, and this isn't me being freaking Gandhi, but I could see how obvious things were. COVID was a huge example of it. And so I was saying things that like, this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. This is what this is. This is what that is. And it was happening. Now, I wasn't seeing that as, oh God, how clever am I? I was seeing it as I'm supposed to be a fucking idiot. I'm supposed to be like some guy that worked as a personal trainer for a bit, played football, played some guitar. What do I know about anything? And you've
Yeah.
got all you scientists with all your letters after your name and all this stuff. You don't know this, and I do. Well, I don't believe that. I believe you do know it. I just believe you're lying about it. And so that was a real eye opener for me. And even now, like you see things happening, and you can just go, "Well, this is what they're going to do," and then they do it, and you go, "Right." Again, it's not because I'm a smart ass. It's because it's pretty obvious, really.
Yeah.
that
It's the
they're
playbook
following
again.
a
Yeah.
script. Yeah, and you'll be the same. Like you see stuff, you know exactly what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and you have all these people that are supposedly experts that so that came as a real shock. Doctors are baffled and all that stuff. You remember it?
Yeah.
You're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not baffled at all. You're just pretending
No.
to be baffled. And I don't like when I'm lied to. And I think I know when I'm being lied to, as you do, and as your viewers do, because I think that's something that's inherent within us. That not every time, we all can get fooled by, spouses and friends that turn out to be backstabbers, all that stuff. I get that happens, but on the whole, I think most of the time when you're being lied to, because I think the truth resonates differently, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think we've had those. I know I have, where like I'll be in the pub with some mates, maybe well, before I had kids, the last time I went to a pub, but I'll be in the pub with some mates or whatever, and a mutual friend will turn up with another one of their mates, and they'll sit down with you and you'll have a beer and they'll be chatting and they'll leave. And you'll go, well, he was full of shit, wasn't he? Jeez. Now, you don't know for a fact that they are because you don't even know them, but you kind of know when you're being lied to.
You do.
You just know, don't you? And I think that's something that I've found a lot. Much more in the last sort of 5 or 6 years because I think we've been lied to more now than probably ever before. But it does make you question, doesn't it? Well, what else was there? Because there's so many things during my childhood and your childhood where you get, well, everyone knows that. Yeah, but do they know that, or does everyone just say that because everyone heard that?
Mm.
How much of World War Two or the whatever revolution of color revolution in Europe of this and that. There's so many of them. English Civil War, all these things in history. There's like this is what happened. Everyone knows that. We learned about that in school. And you go, well, yeah, but did we though?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, so basically, it feels like you were unscarred by all of that, with the crap your dad was getting, and you just carried on with your life regardless. But you were still very much questioning things anyway.
Yeah. I
Would
mean,
you
it
say,
wasn't pleasant, mate. I'll be honest. It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't nice. Like being laughed at and bullied and shouted at and reporters at your house and people, just basically pointing and sniggering. And every time you look, people kind of going and pretending, that stuff's not nice. And I
no?
didn't like it at the time at all. But now, and I didn't understand why either at the time. Not, I didn't understand what was going on. I knew what was going on. I just couldn't understand why they were doing it,
Mm,
particularly the kids, because the kids weren't reading the Guardian and the Observer, so therefore the ammunition they were being given to throw at me was being supplied to them by their parents.
mm,
That to me is insane. If there's a kid
yeah,
in my daughter's school that's their family's whatever, the idea of me laughing and saying stuff to my daughter so she can go and bully them like that is mad to me even now.
yeah,
And I didn't understand at the time, but at the same time, I think I see that as my basic training now because I genuinely don't care what people think. Like I care what my wife thinks, I care what my kids think and whatever. But in terms of the greater, I know everyone says that. Everyone goes, I don't care what people think. And you go,
mm, I
mm,
know. I've
are
said
you
it
sure?
myself, and then sometimes I
Are
catch
you sure?
myself. Yeah.
Whereas I think, once you get it beaten out of you, which it did, let's have it right, it did. It got beaten out of me. That now when it comes to the point where even take COVID, for example, from minute one, I was having it, and I was getting loads of abuse from sometimes from people that I knew and would have considered friends. But I didn't care because this is what I believed to be right, and it turned out to be right anyway. But I was getting lots of private messages from other friends that were going, mate, I wish I could say that. Like I'm with you, but I can't say that publicly, man, because of the fear of reprisals or backlash or losing the job or what the
Yeah.
mother-in-law will say and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, well, why is it that I don't give a shit then? Well, because I had that beaten out of me. That's why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for everything a reason, I'm looking back now I'm 43 years old and I look back at the 9, 10, 11-year-old me and I think I'm glad that happened. As
Yeah.
horrible as it was, I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, we've all had our own traumas or challenges throughout our life. And as like you say, as horrible as it is at the time, it gives you this extra coat of armor. It gives you this wisdom that you wouldn't have had before. And like for me, when I was because I'm a coach as well, the stuff I've been through allows me to have more empathy with people that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't have been through that. So I totally get it. Um So what got you? So you were working for the Arts Council, and obviously you said that that got closed down because of the COVID crap. And did when did the TV stuff start? Did that start from COVID, or was that already in play?
It was bizarre because it launched in November 2019 as the world
Wow,
then went mad. So
wow,
it couldn't have been timed better, to be honest, because within a few months, everyone had been kicked off of everything in terms of your YouTubes and your Spotify's and stuff like that. So we needed to have our own platform, and it was there. I mean, we had teething issues at the start and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, that was fortunate really because while everyone else was sort of being shut down, we were still putting content out there and putting information out there and interviewing people like Dr. Batar and people like that when everyone else was sort of interviewing them and then having their YouTube account deleted.
yeah,
We were obviously, we were lucky in that sense. Um,
amazing, yeah,
but yeah, so timing wise, it was crazy. But I mean, presenting is not anything I'd wanted to do before, to be honest. Like I'd done a bit when I was a musician. I presented an advert for Virgin Media and I presented some footage for them from Festival where I interviewed people. But it was just sort of cash in hand work that was helping me to survive while I was playing in a band that wasn't getting paid any money, really.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it wasn't anything I ever envisaged me doing. And I don't now, to be honest, mate. Like if everything was sorted tomorrow, if the whole house of cards came tumbling down, yeah, I don't want to be doing this.
You don't,
It's not for fun.
no,
And it's not for money, which is what makes me laugh because you get accused of grifting all the time and all this kind of stuff. And
yeah,
it's funny. It's like Bill Gates is a billionaire. I live in a terraced house in Derbyshire. I'm not sure
yeah.
which one's grifting, but yeah, I'd love to just live in an old renovated railway station and brew my own beer and sit in the sun with the kids. I mean
Is
that'd
that
be me, to
what
be
you
honest.
want to do?
Yeah, that'd be me. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the way the world is at the minute, that's not coming anytime soon. But hopefully one day. Bit of luck.
So on a personal front then, in terms of like all the madness that we've seen over these last few years, and it continues to get more mad and mad and mad. And we've got, the big Trump fans that are fully locked into Q. And I've heard recently that this 3-day blackout is coming, the emergency broadcast is happening. This is exactly where we are. Um And then you've got people that are like, no, he's just the Antichrist. He's another puppet that's been brought in. He's surrounded by the same people. Why is he going to be any different? Well, he's going to be different because he's a businessman, not a politician, and all these other things. And he's been persecuted for years and years and years. So if he's been persecuted, that must mean that he's on the right side, and all of these things that we go through in our own mind. Where are you with all of that? Are you just, well, I'm not even going to say anymore. Where are you with all of that?
Well, I judge people by their actions, not what they say. So I look at Trump and who he's surrounded himself by, who he's taken money from, what he's done to reward those people for giving him the money. And I look at what the plan for the what the agenda is and what he's doing to facilitate that, whilst apparently being the alternative. And I just think, well, he's perfect because at the time, going back to sort of 2016, yeah, 2016, 2017, 2018, around all that time, you had all the Brexit stuff going on. You had similar stuff in other countries in Europe, in America. Like people were fed up with the status quo. They were done with it. Even earlier than that, there was quite an awakening happening to the establishment and you know, politics being left and right, two cheeks of the same arse, and all this kind of stuff. The alternative media had started to become a bit of a force. It had gone from basically one man and a dog to actually something significant, and it was making a difference. And so I think what they've done is they've cut the balls off the resistance by making the resistance believe that they've won. So they've given the so-called alternative thinking people, they've given them a champion and told them to trust the plan and it'll all be all right in the end. If you just shut up and do nothing and just trust, then everything will be fine. And what's happening is because there's this blind trust and this addiction to hopium, stuff is being put through that would have received pushback if it wasn't the hero doing it. So you look at Trump with his AI agenda and with the mRNA vaccines and all that kind of stuff. People wouldn't put up with it if it was Harris doing it. They wouldn't put up with it if it was Biden doing it. They'd be they'd be calling it out. Whereas when Trump's pushing AI and when Trump is aligning himself with the brain chip guy and all this kind of stuff, then it's fine. Just trust the plan. It's all part of the thing. There's going to be an emergency broadcast or whatever. Um, so I think that's the reason. I think that's what it's done. It's kind of corralled the alternative movement. I mean, there's so many people now, Alex Jones being a huge one of them, but so many people that I've met over the years, and they all knew that politics was nonsense. They knew it was two cheeks to the same arse. They knew that the establishment controlled everything. Yet now suddenly they believe in it all. Um, Alex Jones was calling out Elon Musk 15 years ago. Now he loves him, and it's like it's a clever move, but it's to me at least it's not a very subtle one. And it just drags us closer to 2030 when they're trying to get so many more things in place. And, you know, you can see it happening in this country where you've got certain demographics where, and this is a generalization because not everyone on the right and left thinks the same, but overwhelmingly, people on the left, okay, yes, they're anti-war and that kind of stuff, but they tend to be more aligned with the establishment in terms of the woke agenda, in terms of the suppression of free speech, in terms of mass immigration, in terms of ID cards and all that kind of stuff, digital currencies, 15-minute cities. I think it's a good idea, climate change. Whereas those on the right aren't aligned with that overwhelmingly. So you go, okay, well, we want to bring in ID cards, but we want the right to go for it. And the right don't want ID cards. But the right are against mass immigration. And they're calling out mass immigration and the dangers as a result of it, unfiltered mass immigration. So why don't we say we're going to introduce ID cards to negate the issues created by mass immigration? And it's that way of sort of corralling people that would generally be against you to get you on board. Hopefully it won't work, but it's certainly what they're trying to do at the minute.
Hmm.
And I think they're doing it with Russia. They're trying to demonize Russia. A lot of the left have bought it. Most on the right haven't bought it. So now, just today, they're telling us that mass immigration into the UK is being caused by the Russians in an attempt to get those on the right to go, okay. Well, if it's the Russians doing that, then okay, I do have a problem with the Russians then, to try and manufacture consent. And that's what I see Trump as. I see him as a Trojan horse to get things over the line without resistance that wouldn't happen before. And I think that's what the persecution's about as well, because it legitimizes him.
I
Same
think,
with the,
yeah.
assassination attempt, which miraculously flicked his ear and then his ear healed in 45 minutes. That stuff gave him legitimacy. And I remember as soon as that happened, I literally straight away went, well, he's president then. He's elected now. That's done it. And he probably would have won anyway, but it certainly would have played a part because it made people go, or maybe he is alternative then. He must be then, because otherwise they wouldn't try and do that. Um, and now they're saying Iran was behind it. I mean, lost count of the
I've never
nonsense.
believed it at all, the assassination thing anyway.
Nah, me either.
It was so staged, wasn't it? It was just so many weird things with that whole setup. And like you say, healed miraculously.
Yeah.
So, so where are you with everything then in terms of, you know, we all do this like circling of, oh, maybe it's that, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's that, maybe it's that. And me myself, I've been, like loads of us, been down a million rabbit holes. Then you bring yourself back up because you're like, oh my God, that's just not healthy. And then it's a case of just going back within, focusing on yourself, doing the work, doing the meditation, showing up as you want to show up in the world. For me, it's very spiritual, very kind, very compassion. I'm a coach to the core of my being, all that sort of stuff. However, love and light and meditation and all the rest of it, you get stuck and you think, well, that's not gonna, we still need action takers because that's not really, it's not gonna ripple out as quickly as we want it to, because unless people see people doing things and challenging things and all of that sort of stuff, then this is going to take ages and ages. So what's your sort of trajectory in terms of what people could or should be doing? I don't like the word should, but you know what I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
the best thing for them.
Mine is very simple, just peaceful non-compliance. And people often, if I say that, go, "Oh, yeah, but that's not going to." Well, it is. If you look at every different thing, I mean, this has to happen en masse, which is where the sharing of information and doing podcasts and speaking about stuff. That's why that is important. And I understand, the love and light, but a lot of that you find they go, "I don't want to talk about that. It's too negative. You're too negative talking about that." It's like, no, I'm not negative. I'm talking about it because I want it to stop, and I
Yeah.
want more people to realize that it's happening. Um, because it is a numbers game, whether people like that or not. It is. It doesn't need to be a majority game. We don't need 90% of the world's population to awaken to make a difference. We don't. It's just a matter of having enough people that say no, I'm not doing it, but to do it peacefully. And I've been thinking this for a while, basically since Southport, to be fair,
Mm.
where you go, do you know what? If you've got three groups of people, and two of those three groups are absolutely fine for the establishment. And one of that group is people that have given up or are unaware. So they're sat at home watching Bargain Hunt, either blissfully unaware of what's going on or aware of it, but well, what can I do? Can't do anything about it. They're fine because they are done. You've already got them in the bag. And then you've got one of the other two, which is angry, often justified, but angry on the street, chucking a rock at a copper. Well, they're fine with that as well. They're fine with that as well because they can chuck them in prison. They can give them a ridiculous sentence, um, and they can use them as an example to others, and they can use them to bring in even more draconian legislation. So they are fine with that one. It's the one in the middle that goes, I'm not doing it. I'm not going along with it. I'm not paying your fines. I'm not locking down. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not taking your fucking compliance juice. And I'm not having it. Simple as that. I'm not having it. They're the ones that are the ones to fear. And once that gets to a critical mass in terms of numbers, like if you think about March 2020, if when they said to everyone in March 2020, we're locking down, and 20, 25% of businesses went, no, you're not. Think that would have been that. It
Yeah.
wouldn't have needed to be 95% of businesses. But what it was is it was less than 1% of businesses. And so they went around and they picked all them off and they gave them big giant fines and more fines and more fines and persecuted them and vilified them in the media like they did with like Cinema and Co. in Swansea and people like that. Whereas if it was a big number of people, they couldn't do it. They simply couldn't do it. There's not enough police for a start to police that many people.
Yeah.
And we saw that during the COVID protests. I was going to protests where there was 100 people, 300 people. In London, 600 people. And the police were coming in and they were picking people off and bundling them into the back of vans and giving them big fat fines. And then suddenly there was 10,000 people and there was 20,000 people and then there was 100,000 people and they could do nothing. And they did nothing. And so they had to back off. And it was like, this is such a perfect example. Like I remember being at a protest in April 2021 when they locked everyone back down again. And there must have been, there was hundreds of thousands there. I mean, the BBC would probably say 900 or something, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was, it was like, and I remember walking out of Hyde Park. I was with my sister and my niece, and there was this big line of police, and it was like, right, okay, here we go. This is where they come. This is where the boys come in, and we have to negate this because my niece is a young girl, so right, we need to be aware of batons flying here. And then I remember just turning around, and even at this point, because we were quite near the front, I didn't even realize how enormous this protest was. I thought it was maybe a few thousand. And I remember turning around and I was like, oh my gosh. And you literally saw the police. I mean, they all had masks on, so you only saw their eyes, but you just saw their eyes like, and they just parted
Really.
and they moved to the side. And I'll never forget, as sad as it sounds, I was a bit end of X Factor. I was a bit, because it was
Yeah.
a real emotional moment of, wow, what a
Yeah. Yeah.
poignant thing. And that just said that to me then. That's what it is. That's what this is. Because there wasn't a single one of us with a freaking sword pulled or a bayonet in our hand, legging it towards them to make them part. It was just people peacefully walking, not stopping, undeterred, just going, no, I'm not having it. And they separated like parted like the sea, and it was like
Yeah.
done, and that was it. And you saw after that point, gradually, I mean, it was all officially done by the July, but up until that point, the draconian, all the mandates, all the bullshit, it all started to just drop off as more and more people started ignoring it because the media. We'd gone from a handful of tinfoil hat, far right, granny killing COVID idiots to Jesus wept. There's like hundreds of thousands of them. And the whole narrative died because you were having the front page of newspapers with huge crowds in Trafalgar Square or on the streets of Oxford Street, and it's like far right, and you're looking at it going, well, I can see two hijabs, and I've not even looked properly. So it's like the worst far right rally I've ever seen. So the narrative didn't fit anymore, and it suddenly tapered off, and you're like, that's all it takes. It's all it takes is for people to go, I'm not doing it. And yes, okay, I might be a bit frightened, but I'm doing it anyway. And I'm going to stand up. And if I stand up, then my neighbors might stand up, and then their cousin might grow a pair of balls and do it. And that's how it works
Yeah.
for me anyway. And
Yeah.
I hope that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of people saying, oh, the protests are a waste of time, this, that, and the other, but
They're
they're
not.
not because they're a visual representation of, like you say, non-compliance.
Yeah, and
Um,
also, John, they they give people like I saw this so many times, like because obviously I've been out there doing stuff, doing podcasts, doing speaking at events and whatever. When these big, when they became big in London, like I would turn up, I'd park in the same place every time. I'd get a tube in or often walk in, and I'd stand at the same corner in Hyde Park, and I'd wait for my mate Craig to come and meet. We'd grab a coffee and but we'd walk along, and people would come up, and it would be their first protest. And but they'd see me or they'd see my dad or whoever else had, David Curtin or someone that they'd seen on, and they go, oh, I recognize that guy. And they'd come over and they'd say hello. And the story was the same most of the time. It was like, I'm on my own. I've got the train down from
yeah,
Sheffield or Darlington or wherever. Sometimes it was crazy distances. I'm on my own where I am. Don't, all my family have all had it. My work colleagues all think I'm effing mad. Like some of them were even like, their husbands of like our relationship's done now. He's a idiot, and it was wow.
yeah,
So they came to these protests on their own, don't know anyone, and they're like, "Do you mind if I sort of stick with you guys? Because I recognise you." And I was like, "Yes, no, just walk with us." So I ended up just walking with people who didn't know, and then roll forward a month or whatever, you'd be in London again, and you catch up. Oh, you make eye contact. You go, "Hello, how are you?" And they'd come over and they go, all right, this is and there'd be five or six people from the same town or village. They're like, I
yeah,
met these last time at the protest on the train back, and we're all aligned, and now we'd go to stand in the parks together, and now we organise this, and we've got a prepping club, and one of us has got quite a bit of land, so we're going to start a homestead. And you're like, mate, that's what protests are about. It's not necessarily about changing government policy immediately, but it's about building your tribe and forming alliances and stuff like that so that if they do want to throw stuff at us, then you're not on your own. And if you're not on your own, like you think about it, if you're facing up against an army, if you're stood there on your own, I mean,
yeah.
it's not looking good.
No,
But if you look behind you and go, go on then, let's have it.
yeah,
I've got my tribe. That's what I saw protests as.
yeah,
Because for me, I will never beg a politician. That's why I don't write to politicians. Like I have written to politicians before to politely insult them or to gauge their views on certain things and kind of almost try and guilt them and maybe give them some facts and send them some scientific studies or whatever. But in terms of emailing an MP and going, please don't do this, please don't vote. No, I don't. No, 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 no. There's no point. There's no point.
and
We're better off creating the alternative to them.
and if you got involved, because you just reminded me really when you're talking about being on your own. So for me, like last year, I'd been challenging council tax and all the rest of it, and I was on my own. And then a serendipitous whatever in Sherwood Forest I met a couple of guys from Coventry, which took me to a sovereign group. And then all of a sudden, you're not on your own, and then you've got these like-minded people and support in terms of challenging stuff in the courts. And you're right, it makes such a difference. And then the knowledge that I've learned from then to now, has been incredible. Is that something that you've got involved with in terms of challenging things like that? Or are you sort of more about just, you know, ruffling the feathers with your TV channel and the people you speak to?
No, there's certain things that I will do and refuse to do. Absolutely. Especially around, education and stuff to do with my kids and things like that, and TV licenses and all that sort of bullshit. Yeah, I won't have that.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I've got friends that do a lot of well, for a long time, I've been doing the free man on the land stuff and the common law stuff. It is a real minefield. That's my one issue with it.
yeah,
That there's so many, it's almost like there's so many purposeful trip hazards on in so many different things where, friends of mine have got taken to court on certain things, and they've literally worded something ever so slightly wrong, and it's designed to trip you up.
yeah,
So it is very good stuff. It's just knowing the right people that actually genuinely have the knowledge rather than have 70% of the knowledge, but there's that there's that gap.
yeah,
That's the one thing. But in terms of like stuff like energy bills and things like that, like when they went mad on the energy bills and those prices went up insane, I remember a friend of mine saying to me that they used to work in the sector, and they were like, "Trust me, mate." They said how they deal with people that won't pay, refuse to pay, and how they deal with people that can't pay or can only pay a bit, he said is very, very different. He said, so what you need to do is look at what you're willing to pay, what you think is okay, justified, which is presumably what you were paying before or a little bit more, but not much, but certainly not what they've put the bills up to. And then you'll have a very different situation. So friends of mine were just flat out refusing to pay it, and they were getting people trying to kick in the door, and all this bullshit that was going on at that time to certain people. And I went, right, okay, I'm going to put that to the test. So I went back to them, phoned them up, and I said, right, I ain't paying that. I can't pay that. That was my wording. I can't pay that rather than I won't pay that. So I was like, I can't pay that, blah, blah, blah. And it went back and forth a bit, and it ended up with them saying, well, what can you pay? So I went, well, this is what I can pay. And they went, okay. And
I
that's
like
what I pay.
that. To
And
show.
that was how many, was that 2 years ago? That
Yeah,
that was 2023, wasn't it? That's what
I
I
like
pay.
that. Yeah,
In fact, I think I even pay less than that now. And it could and I'm so glad that I got that advice, because friends of mine, like I say, that are just flat out gone, I'm not doing it. I'm refused to do it. They got a bit more grief and a bit more, because
yeah,
every now and then it's like, I understand the battle, but sometimes you need to pick them. Like the war is real and the war is around all of us, but it's like, which battles do I go for? If I'm going to lose all my men fighting for what is essentially whatever, is that a good idea? Well, if you genuinely are going to be on the streets, if you have to pay that, then yes, that's where you send your men. Of course it is. But if you're in a situation where you're like, well, actually, if I cut back on this and I cut back on this and I do this and I do that and I move this about, I can use those soldiers, for want of a better term. I can use those soldiers for another battle. Do you know what I mean? So um, that's part of my thinking.
yeah. You
Um,
can't
you
you
know,
can't take it all on. I mean,
no, it's that's the thing, and you find that a bit. Why don't you talk about such and such? It's like, well, I have done previously, but it's not my skill set. It's not my knowledge set so much.
yeah,
And just because I've not massively um, like I'll talk about the Middle East till the cows come home, because I've been there and I've seen it and I've studied it, and it's something that has been a passion and an interest of mine since 2006. We're talking nearly 20 years. Like I've looked into that, so I feel like I'm in a, I'm not as geopolitically savvy as there's lots of other people out there that are far more savvy than me, but I come from a position I think of actually, I kind of know a bit about this actually. I've got a bit of authority to say this, where there's other things. I find this with so-called influencers, not that I consider myself one of them, but people online that say stuff, is they have to have an opinion on everything,
mm.
even if they don't know anything about it. And I have people say to me, well, what do you think about this? And I'll go, oh, I don't really know that much about that. And they'll go, what? I'm like, there's only one of me. Like I can't know everything about everything. What I can sit here and say a gut feeling about something, but I'm not really saying it with any authority. I might be right, but it would be a flip of a coin, like if I am. Like, so I would rather not, you know. So
Yeah,
I tend to go, right, okay, well, it sounds interesting. I'll go away and look at that and whatever. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So changing the subject a little bit here, talking about protests and far right. What's your thoughts on Tommy Robinson?
Um, it's a weird one, you know.
I know.
Because I argued with Tommy for years online about stuff. Um, and then, all the COVID stuff happened. And to be fair, he was very late to the party when it came to actually speaking up about all that COVID tyranny and all that bullshit. He was very late to the party, but he came to the party eventually. And so I had him on the show. He came here and we sat down and had a chat, and I got quite a bit of grief from it, from different people. And I was like, well, one, like this, that's what I do. Like I interview people, and two, like I'm a man in his 40s. I'll talk to who the fuck I want.
Yeah,
Like I don't ask you for permission. And we had quite an interesting conversation, to be fair. And he basically said that he felt like he'd basically been used, and that he'd become part of the problem in terms of causing division, and that he believed Islam was the problem. And now he realizes that it's not, and actually it's way above that. And actually, there's these people sowing this division. And I was there like, I was not expecting that,
yeah,
but that's what I think. And so it was a really interesting conversation. And so when I said I'd done this interview, I was getting loads of grief, and I was saying to people, mate,
yeah.
trust me, listen to what he has to say. It's different from what he formerly said and whatever. And then October 7th happened, and it went straight back to the old guy again. It went straight back to, the Mr. Israel. Now, whether that was always going to happen,
Don't know.
is I don't know. I did wonder whether something would happen to him in prison, whether they would martyr him, because that would cause. I mean, could you imagine on the
Yeah.
streets? And they still could. Wouldn't surprise me. So, whether Tommy is being used knowingly or whether Tommy is being used um, unknowingly is only he can answer that. I don't know.
He's invited people to contact him on a recent video. And my partner was saying, you should get him on, you should get him on. When I saw him come out of prison, with his big bouffant hair and with a smile on his face, I don't know. I just had this feeling, this gut feeling that it wasn't even him. I have this sometimes where it feels like it's like when Boris was on death's door in Convid and he came out and it was like he was a different guy.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
what
I
I
remember
mean?
Jennifer Curry told me that. She said she didn't, because obviously she had a relationship with him for 4 years. She said she didn't believe it was the same guy.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, well, nothing, mate. I'm at that point when nothing would surprise me now.
Oh.
Like I'm literally, like I remember a meme actually, and it was like there was it's a point of view of just a guy driving, so you can just see like that. Well, might have been a woman, but looked like man's hands. Anyway, on a steering wheel driving, and there's just a cow, and it just says like I was going to say something, but it's 2020 in it, and it's got like that now, isn't it? You're just like, yeah, it's a flying cow. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Of
Why
course
wouldn't
it
it be?
is.
Why
Yeah.
wouldn't it be? So no, nothing would surprise me, mate,
I know. It's
at all.
crazy.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of the time because I know you've got another one,
I
another
know it's a
conversation.
mad day today. The only reason is it's because my wife's away for a long weekend with she's got some friends that moved to Australia and they're back, but not for long. So I'm flying solo with the kids. So obviously, because they're so young, I can't have them sat while I'm doing podcasts. So I've literally had to just like do a week's work in like 3 days and then have 4 days with them, which is great because I love spending time with them. But
Of course, yeah.
it's kind of become a bit rubbish in terms of time and stuff. Yeah.
No, not a problem at all. I was just going to say, we'll sort of bring this to a close. What would you, it's been great chatting to you. Thanks ever so much for your time. I've really enjoyed it.
No, same. We can't believe how local we are. You're not far at all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I tend to finish some of my conversations with anything you feel called to share. With you, I'd rather sort of say, because the people that are watching this are mostly like-minded. There are some newbies that are coming in and questioning things or whatever. people are, I suppose, like you said, looking for hope or trying to pin their hat on the truth. Well, there is no such thing as the truth, and there's so many bloody narratives being spun, and we don't know whether that's a psyop, we don't know whether that's true. Is this is all pantomime?
Yeah.
What would you say, you know, is wisdom, whatever, pearls of wisdom in terms of how to be navigating our way through the madness? Um,
I wish I knew. I
I
wish I
know,
knew.
I
No,
know.
it's do you know what? For me, like I try my best to. I remember Dad saying to me years and years ago, you need to find a balance because I was flying down rabbit holes. Like it was like I was in a bobsleigh, and it was like you need to find a balance between trying to find out what's going on in the world and make a difference and whatever, and finding out how Derby County got on. Like that, you have to have that balance. And there's a lot of people, especially newbies. Um, that they don't have that balance because once you find out something, your head explodes and you're like, what else? And so it's just constant. And so I find like I'll put a picture up of me like at an ice hockey match and watching the New York Rangers or whatever. And I can guarantee it. If it's not the first comment, it's definitely in the first three or four. Bread and circuses, mate. And it's like, but I like bread and I like circuses. As long as I know it's bread and circuses, what's the problem? And I think that is part of a way of navigating stuff is just having that balance of yes, it's horrible. Yes, there's nefarious people and nefarious things at play, but it's also a really cool world. There's also really wicked people, awesome people out there, and there's great things and people doing great things, and it's a beautiful place. Take yourself up to the Peak District and go for a walk. Like there are amazing things too. I find that helps, not always, but that helps kind of find some sort of balance so it doesn't become too negative. Because if you become all negative, then you're useless to yourself and your family and everyone anyway.
Yeah,
So that's part of it. In terms of knowing what's real and what's not, we have this radar of our own that kind of tells us a lot of the time that if you actually trust it, this gut feeling, you generally get it right. Not all the time, but generally you get it right. You tend to know, like we were speaking about earlier, you tend to know when you're being lied to.
yeah,
And it's normally your first feeling. You'll hear something and your first feeling is, well, I think this is bollocks. Like I remember it when the Trump assassination, I immediately thought, I ain't buying this.
yeah,
And I said it, and obviously got lots of shit. But I got a couple of messages from people going, yeah, I was thinking that too, but I don't know. And it's like, yeah, your first thought was it was nonsense.
yeah.
But you didn't want to say it because then the second thought came in, which is, well, what if I say that? And so, if you trust your gut most of the time, it will see you straight, I find.
Absolutely. Um, so where's the best place if people obviously want to dig in more for you in terms of what you're up to? Where's the best place for them to go?
I'm on X as just Gareth Icke. I always say for now because I don't really trust Elon Musk, but and I'm shadow banned to hell as well, but it's still there for now. And then iconic.com, which is ICKONIC.com. All the series, I'm about to sneeze again. Excuse me.
Bless him, he's got
All
hay
the
fever.
hay fever is brutal. All the the series and the documentaries and stuff that we make are all on there. So yes, 2.99 for a month. So just come along and see what you think, and
Amazing.
hopefully enjoy the content. Yeah.
I should have said this to you earlier. Is there anything new coming up for you? I'm guessing probably if you're looking after the kids and juggling everything you're already doing, but have you got any new plans in place?
Well, I just released a documentary. It's my first one as a director, actually, called Why the Middle East, which is literally what it says on the tin. So we got people from journalism, from the military, um, politicians, a couple of ambassadors, one as ambassador to Syria, and basically just put the question to them, why the Middle East? Why? Why does it mean as much now to people as it did in for the Crusades? And so there's so many different views and stuff. And I literally just asked them that question. And I think it was funny because most of them have got professionals and they're used to being interviewed. But I was being purposely vague because I didn't want to lead them
Yeah,
anywhere. So when I just said, I just got one question for you, mate, why the Middle East? I think they were looking at me like, is he won a competition to make a documentary from like a cornflake packet? But it was intentional. So just to get all these people different takes and then just to let them talk. And then they went off some in some rabbit holes Others, more, about location and natural resources and religion and whatever. But yeah, I kind of came out of it going all of the above. But hopefully, there's a few things in there that some people will go, I never thought of that before. Yeah.
Mm.
So that came out 2 weeks ago. And I'm in the process of already planning the next documentary, which is basically about the flame retardant chemicals that are in our furniture, which I know might sound really left field. Why are you talking about that? But I interviewed a guy who's a government whistleblower, and basically, on average, each house in Britain, this is all illegal in the rest of the world, by the way, so it's only Britain. Each house in Britain has an average of 40 kilograms of toxic flame retardant chemicals in it, in your mattresses, in your settees, in everything. Um, and they're not flame retardant in the slightest because they burn. And when they burn, they release chemicals that are actually what kills people and
They're
actually
going to
what
kill
killed
you.
people at Grenfell. So,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
so we're working on that.
Wow.
Going to start work on that in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, which is hopefully that one will kind of ruffle a few feathers because it's what I find is as much as people are nice a lot of the time, we can be a little bit I'm all right, Jack, at times. And so it's like, yeah, the Middle East, yeah, that's over there somewhere, don't affect me. Whereas you go, well, no, this does affect you. It's literally in your house, mate. And
Yeah.
it's a big deal. So and when you look at the names of people that have basically been stopping these flame retardant chemicals, um, any legislation being brought in to get rid of them, the people that have been stopping them, when the names were coming up, it was Patrick Vallance, it was Matt Hancock, all the names that keep showing up that were there in COVID and all that stuff. So it's hopefully it will blow up that one with a bit of luck.
Yeah, you've sold me on that one. Okay, cool. Very exciting. Well, thank you. I know you've got to get off. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute
I've
pleasure.
loved it.
I know the viewers are going to love it as well.
Thank you. Very kind. And I'll speak to you again, hopefully, I'm sure.
Definitely.